All right. Jack Boon.
What's up, man?
What's up, man?
How are you guys?
We're doing good.
I'm doing well, bro.
Good.
Good to see you. How, when you reflect on the last year of career and life and business, where are you at? How you doing?
Man, I'm pleased to say that I'm doing really good. I probably feel as optimistic and relaxed and confident about the future as I ever have. I think if we go back beyond the past few years, like business has come with a lot of ebbs and flows and struggles, and none more magnified than, you know, the period of life where we're all locked down, and those things, you know, dug up for a lot of us uncertainty and put question marks next to, you know, whether it be just your passion or whether it be about your ability to succeed in this game of business. And now being out the other side of those things and being given the opportunity to stretch the legs without interruption and being back in a good place where things are blossoming and having good opportunities on the horizon, I feel like I'm in a really good spot.
Do you want to start off? I don't know if we should start off with this, with the little. You said there was something on the horizon because you talked about the past.
Yeah.
And you said there's something on the horizon that you're looking to create or do that you haven't announced yet.
Yeah, so this all happened really, really quickly. Like, as you know, I kicked off the Vitality Brotherhood, the coaching stuff at the end of last year, and that exceeded my expectations just in the way that went. It was such a great thing that, again, had me walking into this year feeling super excited, but due to just life circumstances and only having so much time and energy to put into things, that's going to be on hold until the second half of the year. But that's largely because of this opportunity that's literally been only presented, I think, in the first or the second week of January. So are we familiar with the gym 98 gym, 98 Riley Street was the original one? Yep, Ben, you know it. So it was founded by Chris Feather in 2015. They now have another location in the Sydney CBD, one in Bondi, they've just opened up in Adelaide, and I think they also have Cremorne in Melbourne. So that's now a franchise, and 52% of it's still owned by Chris, and the other is owned by Russell Crowe and Packer. So pretty good backing, and you're now talking to the owner of the Noosa location, which will be opening in March. So that's all come up really quickly. A friend of mine who was a client in both of my businesses over the last 10 years, who we've stayed in contact. He's originally from the coast and is back up there now, kind of just brought it to my attention and said, what do you think of this? And I kind of just responded, yeah, I would do it with you. And he goes, well, I was hoping that you would say that. And things kind of snowballed really quickly from there. So we've got a site. Applications are in with council at the moment and just going through the processes of what it takes to get a gym open, and I'm heading up next week to go through the layout to do the floor plans of the gym and the orientation and the design elements. So yeah, man, it's pretty exciting to be affiliated with a pretty strong brand in 98 and getting my foot in the door in the Sunshine Coast, which is again something we've spoken about privately, with the intention to probably make my way up there over the future years.
Yeah, so I was going to ask. So you think about moving up?
Yeah, I think, you know, we were just talking pre-recording about family and kids and all of those things to look forward to. And when I think about, you know, the type of lifestyle that I'd like to give my children is the one that when people who don't live in Australia think of Australia, what do they think of? They think of the sunshine, they think of the beaches, they think of outdoors.
No, man, they think of killer animals.
They do.
Yeah, ask him. You're over there. You're over in the US
man.
now.
Everybody's so afraid of going to Australia. Not only because apparently the flight takes a week or something, and apparently like 24 hours is such a long period of time. Yet when you blink, a whole day's passed. But when you're in the plane, it's all much different. The spiders, the snakes, they're everywhere, Jack. Haven't you seen them?
Yeah, they do.
Kangaroos
freak out.
box you in the street.
The US thinks we've got some combination of like the scariest, most deadly animals on the planet and the cutest. You know what I mean? They think like the koalas in our trees and kangaroos hopping down the the road.
Yeah, and they don't realise that, hey, there's none of that in Melbourne.
Yeah.
Like, you got to be in the bush.
Yeah.
And America's animals are pretty fucking savage. They got bears.
Yeah, bro.
They got mountain lions and shit.
People get jacked on trails.
Exactly.
It's like, oh, but
I think maybe it's a bit of Steve Irwin legacy.
yeah.
Maybe a bit of
OG.
Dundee.
True.
You know what I mean?
True.
But what made you decide to, okay, what's your framework for making a business decision? Because you have Jungle going really well.
Yep.
You have this probably expanding family in the future, which you'll likely have, which is more responsibility. What's your framework for deciding whether a business decision like becoming a joint owner is a sound decision versus doubling down on Jungle?
Yeah, there's a few things that are sort of factored into it. One of them being, Jungle and Gripped were both startups. And so startups have got a lot of emotional attachment and a lot of investment, and there's a risk element. Your balls are on the line, so to speak, and I've really gone all in on those, and they've been valuable experiences. Whereas I view this a little bit different, given the brand is already established, and doing Jungle in a way was also for me an opportunity to prove to myself that I could do it by myself without a business partner, which I did in the beginning. And it's come with a lot of really important lessons and things that I've needed to upskill and just be across for understanding business, if that makes sense, given that, my role and responsibilities in the first gym was very much the product and the service and the training and the nutrition. It wasn't so much the numbers and the bookkeeping and the administration side of things, and I think it was important for me to be across both of those.
So prior to this offer,
Yeah.
because I can imagine, man, because and we talked throughout COVID and the lockdowns and just the impact that had across like our industry.
Yeah.
That you at least would have had moments where you'll be like, I'm never doing this again. I'm not going to open up another gym. I know a lot of owners who...
I was negotiating selling it. I was talking to people about
Undoubtedly, right?
potentially buying it. Yeah.
So prior to January, before this offer, like, had you thought about going back in with another one or doubling down on the industry as gyms?
Not so much, but I was definitely looking to do something new. To be honest, if it wasn't for this opportunity coming across the table right now, and it's still something that I might be looking at come the end of the year, I was looking at buying a laundromat.
Yeah, I remember.
Right. So I'm much more business minded now and thinking of passive incomes and putting myself, well, I guess, I feel really grateful for the fitness industry in a way that it gave me something to fall back on and land on my feet. And I've been able to monetize my skills in the space, and setting up and creating a lifestyle that allows me to live the way that I want to, which is with a little bit more time and freedom, and using the opportunities that fitness has given me to invest back into other things that are going to continue to generate an income for me, without actually having to exchange my time for money, so to speak. So, I was looking at other things. I mean, I've had a few people approach me about doing, other versions of or another location for Jungle. But it comes back to the question, hey, do I really want to bite off that much stress? Is it worth the squeeze for me? And as much as it's been really cool to do Jungle on my own, I do miss working with people. Obviously I've got colleagues and stuff, but on a decision making level, to be able to bounce off other minds and be able to delegate responsibilities and do it a little bit more for the fun and not have that full weight on your shoulders is something that, perhaps I'm craving a little bit as well.
Yeah, I can appreciate that feeling.
So where are you going to get that now? That's gonna be in this new joint venture.
Yeah, well, I've even speaking with Chris about the 98 brand, that there will be some opportunities to do some things with them, which probably go across, their national programming when it comes to, the design elements of the class structure, or whether that be nutritional things, whether it be workshops, whether it be community events that we do. I think particularly in the Sunshine Coast, there's going to be a lot of opportunity for those kinds of things with the outdoors doing stuff with in that sense that a lot of the businesses up there are small, locally owned businesses, and there's collaboration opportunities there, and to be, doing stuff in that sense just out of the name of fun rather than needing to make it profitable and make it succeed excites me a bit.
In your many years of working in business, for the young coaches and entrepreneurs listening to this, what are the biggest lessons and takeaways that you've learnt about business and the mistakes you've made that maybe you would impart to them to avoid?
It's a long list.
What's the
I think when I've had this conversation with others that are starting businesses or gyms, per se, the biggest lessons that I've learned and had to learn painfully, because they were a painful lesson, was to do with business partners and doing business with friends, and not being. So if I tell a story of how my experience really went, it might help paint the picture of that lesson. Is rather when I started Gripped, I had a vision. I had already been operating it as a personal training company across the Zap Fitness locations with different trainers working underneath me. And then I wanted to open up the gym itself, and that happened with my business partner, who at the time was unemployed and had been for nearly 12 months. His personal life was upside down, to say the least. He'd lost his brother. He hadn't dealt with that very well. Had a drug addiction, all sorts of things. And the way that we came into business together was just at that time I had him coming into the gym every day and was training him and just trying to get some positive stuff going on back in his life. And I was very young, and so I didn't necessarily have the confidence to do it all on my own because of the operation side of thing, that I didn't have either the knowledge or the energy or the capacity to do all of it, and had no real foresight on the success and where we were going to go. It was more like, fuck it, shake hands, let's have a go. And I've asked you to come into business with me out of love and wanting to be a good friend, more than the necessity of needing that individual for that skill. And as the business became successful, obviously the roles and responsibilities changed within it. And, the negotiation of those things, I could say I gave up too much of the pie. And there wasn't enough sort of forethought with contracts and agreements and things on how to handle circumstances as they changed. So the long and the short was it started to breed probably some resentment towards one another, and pulling in very different directions, and ultimately to a place where, I had to leave. So I think the lesson to be learned is be very careful. If you're going into business with a friend, you should probably be willing to, or at least understand that you're at risk of losing that friendship, and the things that you can do to try and mitigate some of that risk is to be very clear before day one of operation exactly what the roles and responsibilities are, how people are going to be remunerated for those roles and responsibilities. When do you have time periods already stamped for review as those things change? What is the protocol if somebody decides that they want to leave? All of these things should be, even though you're not going into a business with the plan for one of you to leave it in 2 years, the conversation should happen before you even get to that point about what happens when that does. So then when the decision is made, it's not made from an emotional place, and it is just objective. It's on the dotted line. So having a lot of clarity around those things, I think, prevents a lot of potential problems in the future.
There's so much what you just said that I can relate to. So I used to own, I franchised a few supplement stores and had a business partner. Amazing guy, right? But looking back on it, we were quite young, and if I could add to, I can completely resonate with what you said, but one of the things I think why I chose him to be a business partner because I don't think I was fully confident in doing it by myself. And I knew because of our friendship that he would be more forgiving of my mistakes. You know what I mean? And that's something I didn't realize at the time. I didn't have that kind of awareness or anything like that. But I just knew that, look, hey, we're both going into this as amateurs rather than having this kind of like wisdom and forethought into like, no, this is a business partner. It's not a friendship. It's not just trying to take a romanticized journey together in this. There has to be kind of like some clarity over like a lot of the things to do with business, right? And when we started getting into like financial difficulties and troubles, like one of the things that came up was I wanted to sell one of these stores that was doing really well, and he didn't want to sell it because he had sort of developed an identity around that particular store and couldn't imagine his life without it, you know? And I think, I was clouded by our friendship as to sort of saying, oh, okay, cool, well, we're losing all this money and we really couldn't find our way out of this hole. But I was not able to have like the hard conversations with him because of that friendship. Do you know what I mean? And ultimately, it led to us going out of business. Yeah. It ended quite badly. Our friendship didn't because, I took responsibility over like my actions in inactions, and so, so did he. But yeah, I can completely hear what you're saying with like, we didn't have any of those conversations. It was a very similar thing. Like, it was exciting. Let's go do it. Yeah. And, we paid the consequences for that.
Yeah. So definitely, I mean, they're the obvious ones. Again, Benny, we were even talking before we started recording just about sort of, much more minor things in terms of like equipment selection in a gym, for example, buying things that maybe, appealing to me because at that time I was, really deep on the bodybuilding style training and wanted that very niche and unique isolated piece that, you saw Dorian Yates using on, in the black and white clips, but understanding that 90% of your clientele probably aren't going to know what they're fucking doing on it or even be able to fit the machine. So understanding that you are not your business is a big one, and doing what's, speaks to your clientele, I guess. I think regular feedback with your clients and your members is such an important thing with your customers. Giving them the opportunity to speak freely and confidentially with feedback, which can be tough, especially when you're your own boss. You back yourself and you're not used to being told that you were wrong or told what to do by others, but to not have the insights into what your members and your clientele want and feel and are experiencing, not listening and doing too much just on your own accord, I think can become problematic.
How do you implement a feedback mechanism strategy that gives people the courage to be honest with you?
Anonymous surveys. Is what I've always used, where there is no input for their email address or contact information, rather just the opportunity to click on some answers.
Are there any mistakes? Because, the three of us here, we have, mentored other younger coaches and things like that. And, the question we're asking is like, hey, what are the mistakes that you've made that you think, we want to teach and perhaps save someone from making the same? But are there any mistakes you think of being like, no, these are the mistakes you've got to let people make? Because that's a question that I ask myself a lot. Like, I feel like, when we talk about coaching and mentoring, it's the ability to, where you live in a day and age where you can get advice, you can get one-on-ones with like the best people on the planet in any given field. It's like amazing, right? And that the benefit of that is like being able to get from point A to point B exponentially faster than previously. But in the process of that, sometimes I feel like if you listen to anyone with the experience, like what are we asking here? Like what are the mistakes that crafted the person you are today? And there's bits of it where I'm like, they need to learn the hard way. Like, do you get that same kind of like intrinsic learning experience without making some of these mistakes, right?
I don't know if this answers the question perfectly, but something that comes to mind when I think more back to my personal training and then leading into sort of coaching days, and I think we can all agree that the modern day personal trainer seems to be a little bit more than just a personal trainer. And again, we spoke not that long ago, even if you look around a commercial gym now, the standard and quality of training is definitely improving, right? But when you've learning something new is very inspiring, right? And so you go, whether you do a Polican course, whether you do a Czech course, whatever it may be, might be clean health, it could be anything. You might have a mentor. You go and learn all these wonderful and new exciting pieces of information, and you get very eager and motivated to pass this knowledge on to your clients. And I think it's always coming from a good place to be of the highest value that you possibly can be to your client. But without a doubt, we all at times have probably flirted with the line of where you should not be speaking out of, what's the word I'm looking for? You're speaking beyond your scope of qualification. And that will occasionally or eventually, I think to everyone, will come back and bite you on the ass. And you have a bit of an oh shit moment.
Can you share that oh shit moment? Do you mind
Yeah,
being
sure.
vulnerable for a second?
Sure. Depression is very common. We have a lot of, and to understand what depression is, we could even say it's multifactorial in terms of, it could be biochemical, environmental, behavioral, so many influencing things that create this symptom of depression. And, you start to learn more things about SSRIs and perhaps the short-sighted vision or nature of those medications, especially when you start to dig a little bit deeper in, looking at the person's nutrition and going, okay, well, is there the tyrosine to help build the building blocks for dopamine and so forth, and good cognitive health, you could say. And just never trying to make that decision for someone, but just even just having these conversations with people on SSRIs and understanding, hey, is this something that you want to be on for the rest of your life? Have you been told, or are you under the belief that you are going to need to be on these things? Are you aware of X, Y, Z? Here is a potential long-term path to light at the end of the tunnel, or life without those things, if the appropriate stages are met. And then perhaps just not being clear enough with that communication, or being a little bit too eager with it, and then having somebody go cold turkey off them and then spiraling really badly.
That happened.
And by no means was it me telling them what to do, but rather just sharing that conversation. And it was more, hey, food for thought, sit and have a think about this, but I probably wasn't clear enough on it. And they took it as an instruction to stop their medication, and did so, and then, had a bit of a manic episode, and, they spoke to their doctors, and then you got an angry doctor, and then you're feeling like you're going to get sued, and, and then it's a scary thought, because you have, spoken on areas that, you're competing with a doctor who goes to medical degree. They go for a fucking reason. And just getting one of those sort of frightful moments to realize that, hey, when you're having these conversations beyond fucking squat technique, you need to really handle it with a bit more care.
Yeah. And I think,
Thank you for sharing that.
That's all right.
one of the things that over the years I've said, and I no longer kind of say, is stay in your lane, right? Because I just
You say that now, or you don't say it?
No, I don't say it now, because I hate the visualization of that. I hate this whole stay in your lane concept, right? It feels like such a nanny state kind of thing to say, which is just, not something I vibe with. But in saying that, I can see what you're saying. And I do think it's really important because, as we know, it's like that Dunning-Kruger effect of you learn a little bit of thing and you want to go apply it, and there's no one vetting that process of hey, this thing that wasn't within your curriculum, your qualification, your real practical understanding, like this thing in some theory or some passing kind of learning, you're now going to go and then enter into dialogue with a client, and you don't really know how to ensure that an action doesn't get taken beyond what you intended.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I do think that's important, and so that is definitely a growth curve, and there's no one really out there. There's no kind of group or anything out there that you can go to make sure that, like, am I qualified now? Like, do I have the ability to enter into those discussions? Right? It's a gray zone, and it really kind of comes with like learning, as you said, like that was a hard way to learn. And this is one of the things when I'm talking to coaches and we're talking about things that are beyond squat technique and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'll say, listen, I'm going to pass on some of the things that I do when I get into these discussions. Like, so the first thing you should be saying is, if you're going to talk about like a medication, go, hey, have you talked to your doctor about a long-term plan with that? And then you want to make sure you're not leaving it there. You'll be like, because maybe in your next appointment with him or her, that's what's, needs to come up, and just sort of see like, what would it take? What would they like to see some form of like tapering off of that or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Because as you point out, if you kind of start a conversation and don't finish a conversation, then completely up to the client about what actions they're going to take from that.
For sure. And I think that's what it was. It was a case of missing probably a little bit of clarification and speaking with perhaps a little bit too much conviction.
Yeah.
It's going to happen. That makes you so relatable to share something like that, because I'm sure a lot of young coaches listening to this that's something that they fear. But it can happen, and it probably will happen to a lot of people who are very enthusiastic in their communication, the same as me, without enough caveats and careful language. So, man.
And the scary thing about it with businesses as well is that like you could get 30 great reviews.
Yeah.
But then you get the one really bad one.
Yeah.
That one carries as much, if not more weight than the 30 good ones.
That's right.
And when it's somebody, I was doing business in, a high affluent area of sort of South Yarra and Toorak, and these people got money. Yeah. They're not the kind of people you want to piss off. The
stakes are higher.
The stakes are higher, So that's definitely something that sort of popped to mind from a long time ago that was a valuable lesson that I think young coaches should just be aware of in their communications.
Yeah.
I know you got some things on the little Mickey Mouse pad I saw there.
I feel like we intuitively went to most of them.
Did we really?
Yeah, we're going kind of where we wanted to go to. Like I was reading your... Man, when I typed your name into Instagram, it didn't come up because you've got it under Living Rewired. Is that normal?
My name's in
I was like, I know I follow this guy. I couldn't find him. I found you, but it's okay. But
yeah,
it's like...
I don't know.
Anyway, maybe you're shadow banned.
Maybe.
Probably.
I occasionally say some things I probably shouldn't.
Oh, you definitely do.
Oh, that's perfect segue. Okay, so in my Trinity retreats, we have lovely dinners together, and I ask them, and I lead the conversation. I ask them, okay, what's one controversial opinion? I'd love to hear both of you. What's one controversial opinion that you hold that you don't vocalize very often, perhaps publicly, that you feel very steadfast and strong in? Could be health, could be personal, philosophy, anything.
Something I feel quite strongly about, but I just don't speak about it publicly yet, is because it's not too far away from what we're just talking about, is that I don't really have a right to give my opinion yet because it's worth a pinch of shit, as I don't have a child. But when I think about the way that I want to do it when my time comes, with also just such a big belief in the power of nutrition and that humans' development and state of well-being and setting themselves up, or setting them up with the highest probability for success, is how you feed your child. It is the highest expression of self-respect and love and care. And, in many ways, I believe that you can't miss what you've never had. So when you see these kids at parties and all sorts of stuff running around just souped up on crazy amounts of sugar and eating Maccas, and you see it on people's Instagram stories and stuff like that, I look at it with such judgment and view it sort of not as child abuse, that's a strong label for it, but it's something that I look forward to, I suppose, is being able to put that on demonstration in the future when I am a parent, to be able to open the doors for these conversations about why I do things in this way, and again reflecting on some of the difficulties I had, particularly in the learning space as a kid, and looking at what I was eating back then, cereal with tablespoons of sugar, and no wonder I couldn't fucking pay attention in school and all these sorts of things. So, it's a little bit controversial, I think, to be making statements in that realm, whereas, and again, not too far away from it is a horrible one is, your obesity is costing me money, through the public healthcare system and our taxes. That's, if you speak with people that work in the hospital system, 90% of the emergency is taken up with people, but with metabolic dysfunction and disease, and it's like,
preventable disease.
Preventable disease, exactly, yeah. And so a large part of our taxes are paying towards that. So there's a couple of controversial ones, I suppose.
Yeah.
I don't know how you guys feel about those two sort of topics.
I got something on the first one, but I'm going to let you breathe on it.
Well, I'm the one with kids, right?
That's why we're both looking at you.
Well, look, if I can credit Ben Kant.
Feeds his kids well.
A beacon of inspiration and source, because they're very busy. They have 3 kids, feeds them really nutrient-dense foods, finds a way to incorporate nutrient-dense foods and have some flexibility too. We're talking sardines, we're talking, you do these beef liver burger things. You put in effort. Granted, you have financial stability to create the room for that, but you guys put in effort and diligence.
We do, but I would also put in the caveat that Instagram is like the highlight reel, So I have plenty of parents that message me that
so you feed them Fruit Loops?
When have I put up a picture of my kid throwing a tantrum on the floor, and I'm like, look, there's plenty of funny parenting stuff that comes up on my feed all the time, and I send them to Zoe because that's fucking what we deal with a lot. But so when I'm feeding the kids and they're eating sardines or they're eating their organ burgers, and we're trying to do that, and credit to Zoe, man, what she does for their meals through the day is amazing. I look at it and I'm like, wow. Whereas if I have to feed them for the day, it's I just slap on some burgers, open some tins of sardines. I don't go to any effort. But here's what I sort of say is it's no effort. That's the whole point.
You're normalizing it.
Yeah, yeah. It's when we sort of say, being healthy is more time or more money or more whatever. Organ burgers is one of the cheapest meats that you will buy.
Sardines are $1.80.
Sardines are very cheap as well. So, and they both, one goes in the air fryer, one is a tin getting open. So there is zero effort that gets put in on my behalf, in those preparation of those meals. But in saying that, they still eat some regular kind of kid stuff as well. And it's kind of you go into parenting thinking, it would be nice to have a really rigid sense of what's going to happen here. And then you kind of quickly realize there's a bit of a learning curve as to, what kind of boundaries you put in place and what kind of ones you bend on. And I've said that with that's been my experience with a lot of things with parenting, my expectations with business, my expectations with my training and stuff like that. I've had to change my expectations on things to accommodate for having 3 kids in my life now. You know what I mean? But more than anything, and I was having a chat with Holly, our friend Holly, who's got a little one now as well. And I think she saw, I think this was the conversation, I think she saw me put up some pork crackle things that I saw Eugene putting on his Instagram. I'm like, hey, what are those? And I got some for the kids. Anyway, there was some seed oil in them. And she's like, oh, but what about the seed oil? And I sort of said, oh, yeah, cool. I mean, it is what it is, for the most part, these kids are eating liver burgers every day and sardines and veggies and fruits. I mean, it's
a piss in the ocean.
Exactly. I just kind of
metaphor.
I don't care that much of these little things creeping in.
Do you feel pressure often to have to justify yourself to your colleagues, really smart colleagues and friends?
Actually, so not that I care. This is a nothing in the scheme of things. But when I put up something like that on Instagram of the kids eating anything off of the most something that an angel pisses out or something like that, the amount of people that message me and go, what about this? What about that? What about this? What about that? I'm like, even with the sardines.
Yeah.
What about the tins? And I'm just like, what do you feed your kids? Like just out of interest, like, where are you coming from with this? And I can't help but feel that that's like a very orthorexic type trait in people that are health focused is they'll take something which is like, they'll do it like the Dirty Dozen with blueberries and stuff like that. If I post about blueberries, and people will find, it's the same people every time, by the way, but they'll find any reason to go, what about? And I'm like, we're not having McDonald's, bro. Like, you know, why are we having this conversation? You know, it's very strange, but it's something that
orthorexic conversation.
I realize that it is very common for people that are in the, not necessarily the health industry, actually. These are people that are just health conscious to that degree where I'm like, the amount of paralysis through analysis that I suspect some of these people have in their lives about what's good and what's not. And it really just shows you of this information overload, and they can't even settle on what you would consider some pretty basic foundational healthy things to eat without being overly concerned about like the minutia.
And mate, I think that's it's something that it's a similar conversation, not even just about children, that I have with my guys in the group coaching and the clients, is especially in the world of Instagram, right? Probably one of the best at it is our friend who's also been on the podcast, Lucas Owen, because he puts out some of the rarest pieces of information that none of us have ever heard about. And it's cool to know that. And it's cool to learn things from him and have that awareness. But what relevance does that have? And the result and the outcome that's going to play out when we look at the entire picture. And so many people, whether they be men or women, you're worrying about the 1%, but you're doing 99% wrong.
100%.
Get the fucking 99% down pat, and then we can have a conversation about the 1%.
That's right.
And this isn't anything on Lucas, because I know we love
him.
Lucas, right? He's an absolute champion. But the biohacking industry, like this is one of the things that like I've really noticed over the time that it's evolving. I feel like more and more of the people that are drawn to that are the ones that are kind of like finding these 1%ers at the behest of like completely ignoring some of the most fundamentally crucial things that should be implemented before you go considering that like cream on top and stuff like that. And it's just like, you know, you look at, just what captures the audience these days, like that attention is just always these, you know, like shiny things that really sort of like people become obsessed over. You know?
I have a metaphor here that I just thought about. I think the biohacking obsession, the orthorexic obsession about healthy eating is like you're trying to find the gold, and you have a map, and you're trying to find the gold on the map, right? And you're hunting and hunting and hunting, and on the hunt for the perfect supplement, the perfect thing is the dopamine. Is this little niche supplement, this little niche thing. And the hunt for the perfect thing that's going to fix all your problems is more internally exciting than having to deal with the discomfort and the pain of, my sleep, my habits, my mental health, my relationships with myself, my unrealized trauma. I got to train every day. Or what about my water? You know, you distracts from all of that in the hunt and pursuit for the perfect golden supplement.
It's so true, man. And it's almost like you see this across like all elements of the chase. You know what I mean? Like with different aspects of like health and you know, that mental health discussion, right? And it's like once they get that supplement in, that's done. Let's start looking for the next one. Yeah. The next one, you know? Very interesting. I was going to say, so just on the, I don't know if this is, look, I don't know how controversial this truly is, but I think that it's like everything in the health field. I feel like it's just a seesaw. It's just like everything has its time, or a pendulum. It's like, this is hot right now. I'm like, give it 5 years. Yeah, cool. Now this is hot. And now this is hot. And now this is hot. And it's just like that can lead to the more mainstream kind of conventional evidence-based people really prioritizing things like the words balance and flexibility and just kind of like this mediocre kind of approach to all of these elements. And I've found by experience that like I feel like that can lend itself to less skin in the game by a lot of clients when approaching certain things. And what I mean by that is like, I was having this discussion. I did a cut in December, and I put my calories down to 2,000 calories, and like I had fucking heaps of the guys go, "What are you doing on 2,000 calories? Like when you're eating 3,600?" And I'm just like, "Yeah, but when I diet, I'm just going to diet hard, quick,
Do
fast,
it aggressively
hard."
for a short period of time.
Yeah,
It's
and
gonna
then
suck
it's sort of, what about this and what about that? And I'm just like, you're overthinking it here. Like, there's nothing to worry about. Like, as an industry now, I think a lot of coaches and people in general get concerned because there's some valid eating disorders out there and things like that you could exacerbate through these things. But I think what it means is that we stop treating people as individuals, that some people do far better with abstinence than moderation. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Like I happily abstain from a lot of stuff. I don't like to moderate a lot of things. I abstain from alcohol. You know what I mean? When I want to go on a diet, I'm happy to abstain from things. But I feel like we do so much education in the realm of like, what is a good food or what is a bad food, or are you even allowed to use labels of good or bad anymore? Like, it's so fucking confusing for the average person.
Oh my God.
And
Absolutely.
so that's why I just kind of like to have this conversation with clients to just say, listen, it is okay to remove things from your life. Like, and I'm not just talking about foods out of your cupboard. I'm talking about whatever, people, jobs, anything. Like, we have this thing that we've got to learn coping mechanisms and learn resilience and learn willpower and self-control over things. But, just to take a page out of James Clear's kind of book with his Atomic Habits and saying, becoming the engineer of your environment, the architect, and kind of learning that you don't have to moderate yourself around things that are no longer in your life.
I couldn't agree more. And I think, one of the powerful things to enable that to, be played out is internal dialogue and the way that you're speaking to yourself and using definitive language rather than, I'm going to try and do less of this, which is this floaty, airy, fairy language that leaves the doors open for negotiation when you're tired later, rather than saying, I don't, I will, I do.
Yeah.
The way that you speak with yourself is going to, play out in your habits and behaviors for sure.
Every word you say to yourself is self-hypnosis. The language that we use is the bedrock, I think, or one of the bedrocks of our quality of life and perception of the world.
I think sometimes you've got to do the rehearsal of repetition too to actually make it be true.
Yeah, almost convince your mind.
Exactly. Change that subconscious mind. Because you might say, let's just use the example of sugar. You might say, I don't eat refined sugar. Well, they know that's not true because they did it yesterday. But if they put in still a practice of repeating that 3 times a day, every day for a 2-week period, you find yourself going down the lolly aisle. Hang on.
Yeah,
and the moment you catch yourself, you're fucking nearly home.
Yeah, you got proof.
Because
you got proof now that you're that person.
Yeah.
Mindset.
Mm-hmm.
You're now coaching a brotherhood of men.
Yep.
An extremely important role that you play in their lives. A lot of men struggle silently with their own psychological ailments and challenges. What patterns have you noticed in the men that you've coached? And how have you been able to, what tools do you give them to support their psychological suffering?
The first thing I notice is just from even my side, the refreshing nature of working with men as opposed to women. And that's no stab at women. For the largest part of my time in the industry was motivated and driven by women, particularly ones with eating disorders and trying to help them in that space. And I can reflect on the last 15 years and think that as a whole, as an industry, we've done really well. I think there's more women in gyms and lifting weights and, less fear of food than we've ever had. But as you can imagine, dealing with those populations requires a great deal of sensitivity at times and to be very careful of the words that you're choosing when trying to positively influence. But with the men, it's been a lot more refreshing to just go direct down the line, which has been cool. And, leading by example, to if you want someone to be vulnerable with you, then you must be willing to show vulnerability to them. You know, if you want more love in your life, then you have to give more life. If you want more money in your life, you should be giving more money away. So always trying to lead from that front and create a space where there is safety to be able to disclose things without fear of judgment. And I think one of the really cool things that happened in the group coaching program was, you know, the guys knew each other from within that circle but in their real world, outside of the Vitality Brotherhood, no one knew anyone. So there was the element of, I guess, safety and privacy, given no one knew about anything about anyone else in their real world and their circles, you know. So that was really cool. But sorry, remind me of the original question.
Well, it was around mindset, you know, basically tools that you use to support men maneuver through their pain and suffering and adversity.
Yeah, well, something that we did in the program really was I used a thing called Wednesday, which was, I guess, I told them was inspired because I'm a show-off and like to boast about some things. And I think in Australia particularly, we've got a bad case of tall poppy syndrome, and you see someone doing well, our instinct is to fucking chop them down.
We do it like no other.
And yeah, as men, we are not very nice to one another.
Why is Australia so pervasive with this thing? I just refuse to believe it. It's not a mentality I want to adopt. Why?
You don't think you see it?
I've seen it, but how do I know that's, you know, Australian dominant and not just because of humans do it?
I've noticed it just by, for example, even just being involved in jiu-jitsu for the last few years. The way that the Brazilian community are to one another is very different to the way that we are to one another.
One of the stark contrasts I had was when I went to America, man. So I went to America after I competed in Brazil, and I was in pretty good shape, obviously, just after a bodybuilding competition. And I remember walking around in the US for the first time, and I would just get stopped and complimented, and like they're just engaging in conversation and stuff like that. And then I started like listening in on conversations, and what became more apparent is that, like, from my experience over there, people that were looking at other people with success would actually kind of use positive language, like, oh, you know, like that's amazing, or must have worked hard for that, or something like that. Whereas over here, I think it's far more common to hear, what a dickhead. Nice car, dickhead. You know, like those kind of things.
I see.
Yeah.
The humor disguises the actual contempt or judgment.
Yeah, look,
It's not even always necessarily humor, I don't think. It's just rather exactly that they're doing well. Yeah, but fuck them, look at him driving that car.
Yeah.
Just got to be tainted with something to make themselves feel a little bit better.
Okay, I can.
And I also think it's one of the reasons why Australians get a little bit funny with like a lot of people from overseas about them celebrating their wins, or like it's almost like this.
Oh, he's arrogant.
That's right.
Right.
Exactly, because there's this
what you mean.
cultural difference, right? So there's this like conservative, like, well, let's say humility, but I don't really know what's that actually. It's probably the guise of humility.
Yeah.
You know. But anyway, that's my experience.
Okay. I can understand that a little bit more.
So we just we used a thing called Wednesday, that every Wednesday was the morning that everybody reported the wins that they've had of their week. That was your opportunity to boast about the changes that you've implemented and the successes that you've had over that past 7 days. And by byproduct, it either, you know, it again normalized that behavior and encouragement and positive reinforcement from the others, while also serving you know, a secondary purpose of those reading those wins and going, oh fuck, I'm not doing that. I don't want to be left behind. I better get my ass into gear. Yeah. And because this guy's talking about how good he's feeling, there's no reason why I can't be feeling. I want that too.
Yeah.
Well, if I want the feelings, well, what are the actions that he's doing that I'm not? You know, so that became a really contagious and positive part of the 8-week period that we went through.
The weekly win concept like constitutes one of the 4 things that I would put into like mental health initiatives that I do with clients, right? And so I used to do the weekly win on a Friday, but there'll be we would focus on one, we would focus on mindfulness. Two, we would focus on implementation intentions. So just like writing with specificity what your goal is for the week. But beyond the goal, it's like, date, time, location, specifically what do you intend to do this week? Because that's got a 3 times greater ability to be followed through upon rather than, being vague on something. Wednesdays, gratitude, and then Fridays, weekly wins. Because there are people that never celebrate their wins. It's just not something they've never done. You know what I mean? So like creating that behavior, that exposure, and seeing other people celebrate that wins, like part of the pathway, to normalize it.
And you use the word gratitude there, and part of the program that I take the guys through, it's essentially 42 different modules and topics or of things that I believe have influence on what it means to be healthy in the modern world. So not putting the cart before the horse. Obviously, you need good nutrition, good sleep, good water, all these, the basic fundamentals of what it means to be healthy. But then as we progress further throughout the weeks and you've been able to establish those habits, there's things that we can start to reach a little bit further for that have value. Breath work and journaling and meditations and gratitude. But again, if we think of the very typical Aussie Crocodile Dundee type figure, which, because this is an online program, I had some guys in seriously rural areas, which is great because we're just talking about basic shit here. But they're probably not the person that's going to sit down and, at least not perhaps straight away as these things get introduced to them, and spend an hour at the page writing about their thoughts and their feelings. So it's a hard task for them to begin with. And so what I got them to do to replace that when it comes to gratitude was, and we've spoken about this before, Alex, was answer the 3 questions. Is what have I done for somebody else today? What has somebody done for me?
Yeah.
And what have I learned? And if you can just answer those 3 questions each day and you have an answer for those 3 things, I think you're quite successfully living a life of purpose and value.
I love that because it's an anchor. It's an anchor, and it keeps you accountable. Those questions. So if you can't answer them consistently, or even one of them, like the learning one, it's a clear awareness that, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing the thing that I said I was going to do. It's great 3 questions.
Do you feel like there's been a change in the industry from a desire to coach going from predominantly women to somewhat at least more men than historically speaking? Because I feel like 10 years ago, the saying used to be like, women are easy to coach because they want to learn and they want to...
Who said that?
Well, the saying
Especially
was...
as a perspective as a man. I don't say that with judgment. I say that with like some things we just really are tricky to understand from a man's perspective.
Well, I mean, the thing, look, my earlier coaching years was predominantly like I would have 70% women clientele, and it was pretty much all body transformation.
Yep.
Your reaction to that.
No, I mean, I can see where you're coming from, but like we used to think like it was easy to coach women because they were more forthcoming with asking for help.
They wanted help.
They were listening to the advice you would give and they were better at deploying it, But I do feel like there's been a change, and that's my experience is that like there's been far more men now that will reach out for coaching, wanting to better themselves, and it doesn't have to be necessarily tied into something that's really specific, like athleticism, like with sports driven or bodybuilding or something like that. These are men that just want to go, you know what? I just want to be the best version of myself. Yeah. I'm talking over longer time frames here, man. Like 10 to 15 years is what I'm talking about.
I think I've definitely seen that trend, but I think that that shift even has happened with my own evolution as an individual. Like when I was in my early 20s, I was trying to be as large and as strong as possible. So I was attracting more of those kind of clientele to be able to try and give you what I'm, putting on show. In a way, it gave that, I guess it gave me that authority to teach people those things. And then as life sort of progresses, my interests and the reasons behind my whys change as well, you know, and I think COVID put a lot of that on show, is just how many blokes are actually really suffering. I think that was the thing that turned for me towards the men, was to just, it really showed me how much suffering was.
What did you see? What are you seeing specifically?
And it's interesting because it wasn't that visible right then and there, but rather probably a year later. That just a lot of the inquiry, just from my own observations, people booking in discovery calls, and a lot of blokes just suffering with habits that exponentially snowballed in the COVID period, that they have lacked the fortitude to turn around by themselves, and not really knowing where to look and who to listen to. And again, like, social media can become pretty confusing.
You mentioned the word anchors before, right? And I feel like what COVID did was got rid of a lot of people's anchors. You know what I mean? Like, your schedule was flipped. Maybe training was one of your anchor, connection to certain friends or like colleagues or whatever it was, no longer there as well. So I can appreciate that, because, man, like, the amount of lockdowns we had, like, by midway through, like, I was at a point, like, I think my mental health was okay, but I was like, the desire and motivation to train in my garage just began to decline. And, you know, and then because it was only 3 meters away from my office, I'd be there and I'm like, I'm missing the ritual of just getting into my car, getting like ready to train, ripping the steering wheel off on the way to the gym, you know, like that was missing as well, you know. And so even, you know, I could completely relate to like what a lot of clients would have been going through.
Yeah. I mean, fortunately, I don't know if there's a statute of limitations on this, but fortunately, we found our own outlet at a certain location.
Oh, yeah.
That gave us that haven. It was a different country. There wasn't any restrictions in that country. But the suffering, the brotherhood, the tools that you're using to help them, the Wednesday.
I think, just on that as well, like we're talking about the mental suffering is, and I can relate personally as well, is there's like there's a transition period for men from, we could maybe label it as from going from a boy to becoming a man, you know, living a life of hedonism and not chasing pleasure all the time, and being willing to understand that there is life beyond yourself and taking those responsibilities. And that's not an easy fucking step. And the transition period goes from, or so many of them are wrestling with that it's still on the fucking rat wheel of Friday. It's Friday, so I get pissed when I knock off. And then I'm grumpy and struggling with the kids or whatever it may be on Saturday and Sunday because you're hungover, and then you're not organised because of those decisions, and you've been on the bag on the weekend, and then you're not preparing any good food, and this thing just starts to gather momentum. And I just think there's a lot of blokes in that sort of late 20s, early 30 transitional period that are having a hard time to do it, especially considering, again, some of the things that we spoke about culturally, particularly amongst men in Australia, that if you say no, you cop shit for it. You choose to make a decision that's better for your health or your well-being, and people boo-hoo you. So to now be in a community of people that are actually all doing the same thing, you don't feel like you're so alienated or alone.
That's it.
By making the positive decisions and by saying no to the pleasure.
You go to the environments where excellence and healthy behavior is normalized.
Totally. I said this about like, so when I was 30, I got into a bad state mentally. You know, I had some things happen in life and stuff like that. And I remember like sitting in the gym, looking at the mirror. I was on the bench, you know, so I'm on the bench, probably hoodie up, and I'm just like sad, you know what I mean? And I'm just like, what am I doing? Like all I keep doing is trying to get bigger or smaller, you know what I mean? Like that was my connection with the gym. And this was when CrossFit was starting to find some legs here in Australia. And this was back when I owned the supplement stores, and I'd had customers coming in saying, you should go CrossFit, you should, you know, everyone who CrossFits was saying that back then. And I did. And it was like such a pivotal change in my relationship with training and community, because at the gym I was a lone wolf, you know what I mean? At CrossFit, all of a sudden I was around people where I'd been out of sport for so long as well. I hadn't played sport for probably 10 years. So it had that element to it as well. And so just having that supportive community and a different reason to train, like there was no mirrors around, and I kind of like really found myself again, and like one of the reasons why I enjoyed doing what I do. And then CrossFit started to gather a bad name. It was like an easy target, like you're seeing the videos of poor execution of form and stuff like that. And, you know, when I would do the seminars at results-based training, like, you know, the group training facility, and, you know, people would be coming in to do their challenges and things like that. And I used to just love having this talk where I was saying, look around you, because like, I guarantee you some of you people are going to become lifelong friends. You know what I mean? You know, right now, you probably don't have anyone in your life that's going to support these positive changes that you're trying to make, you know, the nutrition that you're trying to do. You can have like work colleagues try and give you shit about it. Like, oh, come on, man. Or like, oh, what's this, chicken and salad again? Like, those are the things that you're going to encounter. And having a community in which there is a standard in which that is the new behaviors that you're trying to achieve are celebrated can make the world of difference. And don't be surprised if some of these people move into your life. Look around you right now, and some of the people that are currently in your life make way for them, you know? And it was always really good to see when community members at a gym, you know, would make that happen and elevate their standards.
It's something that I've been...
Can I just excuse myself 1 second? Just go to the bathroom.
That's okay.
Cool.
I can keep talking. Well, that's something that I've been... Door's locked, you got to turn it. That's something that I've been hungry to find in America. And that's been one of the challenges living in New York is finding that community and connection. And thank God that I found, you know, that isolation that I felt. It's like I knew that, man, the answers that I'm looking for, the connection I'm looking for, is not found in these four walls of this beautiful apartment. I need to go out there. And that's where I started boxing. And then once I started boxing, I'm like, I want to do more of this. And that standard of excellence and those people, they're there. And now I just want to do more martial arts and more fighting. And it's like this snowball of effect. And that's also Trinity for me, or for my guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that allows them, I don't know about you, man, but coming up, how many environments did you have coming up as a young coach where you had like a brotherhood or a sisterhood or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Like a group and community and family where all of you are like a band coming together, all rising as one. That's what the Trinity group is for all these young coaches. And I just don't remember really having anything like that except the OG Woodfords I was at.
Yeah.
But even then it's not like really, really together like that. Did you have anything like that?
Yeah, I did, man. At RBT from 2014 to 2018, we just had, this was in South Melbourne, and we just had like an OG crew.
Yeah, you got the OG
You know,
crew.
it was amazing, bro. Yeah. Like it was a good think tank of like really good coaches and professionals. We would often just go down and all train together. Like, I think from a business perspective, we were all just kind of starting out. So it wasn't like we were overwhelmed with our schedules. We actually enjoyed having the ability to stay in the gym floor for like 3 hours. If we wanted to talk, if we wanted to like train with each other, if we wanted to break out the barbecue and put it out in the alley and like have a barbecue after the training session, like we had that time, but we forged like a very strong relationship there for coaches. And I still look back on that as like such an amazing time, because now as a purely online coach, you know, sort of similar to yourself, you know, and I work from home, so I don't even go to an office anymore. There is an element where, you know, you have to just be very aware of like, what are you doing to like ensure you're keeping your connections in your life and stuff like that. I do feel very fortunate in that coaching itself, I find such I get an amazing amount of fulfillment and connection from that. Yeah. And that's what I say to my wife, Zoe. And I said, like, I'm just coaching just the most amazing people, you know, and I've transitioned to, you know, coaching kind of an even balance of men and women, But definitely, and you know, I know I'm sitting here amongst you boys who've got such a priority on men's mental health as well, because we just think it's such an important and definitely an overlooked part from a societal level, you know, and not openly talked about enough. And, you know, and I've had my driving experiences, you know, that have kind of led me to want to open up those relationships with men that I coach and stuff like that, you know, and just kind of like realize that you can make that powerful connection and really make a difference in their lives.
Absolutely. But a lot of now, I would say this, if I can say it, this generation of coaches, you know, a lot of them are in silos. And because online coaching has never been more sexy. It's like an alluring thing. It's like, oh, that's a gateway to financial freedom. But when you're an online coach, you know, unless you have all those clients or you have some type of community, it can be very lonely and isolating. And so I want people to know, listening to this, that you absolutely can find your community, but it's likely not going to be found in your laptop, in your home, in your office. It's going to be out.
It's where I feel really grateful to have Jungle, because even though I'm not on the gym floor, I don't need to be there. I choose to go work from there because I vibe off that energy from other people, and you crave that interaction, and secondary, there's like me having a presence in the place maintains a standard of quality.
Yeah.
I think that's you know, we were talking about business lessons before. That was probably one of the biggest ones that I had as well, is not to be repetitive on the topics, but you know, I built that business up to a point where I had, you know, 400 members and 7 staff, and same thing. I didn't really have to be there, and so I wasn't. And because of that decision, others had cultural influence, and it became a place that didn't represent the values that I was trying to push, and I no longer recognized the business that I'd almost accidentally created. So that was the sort of catalyst for me leaving.
But now you have it.
But now I've got it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting watching, like, you know, there are definitely coaches that are up and coming now, and, you know, who have established business, like online businesses, that haven't had the same kind of like floor work experience that we've had, you know, and like we're talking about it now and just going, oh, it was so pivotal in kind of creating who we are today. And it's like, well, what if we didn't have that? What happens if you just went into like what you're doing now? Like,
I can't imagine that.
But that's what's happening. That's what I'm saying.
I know it is,
like,
but I don't know how I would have done it.
Yeah. And I think it just needs time now to sort of see, like, how does that roll out? Like, does it?
I think you miss a lot of social cues and understanding of behavior and psychology. And I think you build a lot of skills that help you build rapport with people through in-person, because you learn to read body language. And I think there's something quite humbling about trading time for money, which is rather inefficient, but it gives you a perspective that grounds you. So
I think particularly with the training element, right? Like, obviously from a nutritional conversation, whether that happens online or whether it's in person doesn't really have a difference. But when it comes to spending 10 plus years on the gym floor with different personality types and different body types, you know, you by default, without sitting in a classroom, learn about biomechanics and pattern recognition and start to see that, okay, before you even attempt this move, based off your body type and what I've seen this many times, this is the starting cue that I'm going to give to you that'll probably resonate and give us a better technique. And all of these things give you an arsenal and a tool bag of cues to work with different individuals. So then when you do come to your online stuff and probably filming some sort of an exercise library, you've been able to say the same thing in 3 different ways that will click for different people, you know what I mean? And then, because we all ask for technique videos and shit, but you're still not getting vision of all of their warm-up sets and their working sets and those things, and you're limited at what kind of feedback you can give to them in communication. So I feel like without the in-person stuff,
you miss context.
You miss a lot of that.
Fair enough. I was thinking earlier about masculinity when we were talking about men. And I wanted to get your take on the state of worldly state of men and masculinity that you see today?
Shit, I don't know. Like anything, almost, it's just social media puts the extremes on you. You got your Andrew Tates on one side of it, and then you've got cancel culture, and masculinity somehow has to fit within that whole spectrum. And opinions are like assholes. We've all got them, and you're not going to please everybody no matter what you do. Which is where I think values, again, understanding what your values are as a person, as a human being, as a man, what they are, is all one can do to live a life of healthy masculinity. I don't know.
Can I maybe ask a better question then? Who taught you to be a man?
My dad.
What did he teach you?
The ones that stand out is loyalty, for sure, honesty, to do things with intent, to do everything with intent. Taught me about effort. Used to say to me all the time, you don't want to say what if. What if I tried? What if I did this? What if I didn't do that? So not leaving things on the table. I think having sisters as well and stuff helped me, but he taught me about, respect to women and how to treat women. So, I had a pretty unique childhood, which was predominantly spent in the Australian cricket room dressing room. And, the term for us was, this is dressing room talk. And now we're not in the dressing room anymore. You don't speak like that. So what's appropriate language and topics of conversation in a very private place amongst just men versus, how to handle yourself in life outside of that environment. Things like shaking people's hands, looking them in the eyes, which seems like such a normal thing, but again, if we're looking at generations coming through, I feel like these are some really sort of core human elements that people have a great deal of difficulty with these days, which is shaking someone's hand, looking them in the eye, being honest, having loyalty, having integrity. Everything's, I don't know. But yeah, my old man definitely taught me a lot.
And growing up in that cricket club, for those who don't know, you were supposed to be this, correct me if I'm wrong, but you were painted to be this phenoms. Like this would be the thing for you, right? You grew up there. I imagine you experienced a lot of pressure to be this top tier athlete.
Yeah, and I think that probably paints a picture as to probably why I have such a strong perspective of the tall poppy syndrome as well. Like I grew up in Tasmania, which is, it was big fish, small pond. And whether it was traveling, I spent a few years in England as a kid, and just going to different schools and things, and it was unique, like you turn up to a school and you don't know anybody, but they all know who you are, and there's a lot of things that you were given that attention without earning it, so something as simple as I was sponsored by Gray Nichols from birth. My mother has got all her photo albums and stuff of us through our entire lives and childhoods. It's quite impressive and organised. But next to on page 2.
After the birth certificate.
Yeah, after the birth certificate and me there with mum, there's Gray Nichols sponsorship. And so
little baby's handprint, signature, contract.
Exactly, that sort of setup. So, that was the starting point of so many things that brainwashed me in many ways, which created a lot of difficulty with around the sport of cricket and trying to fill very big footsteps. And when you think about that quite, logically, in my mind, to be successful, I had to surpass the records that my dad set. And, statistically, that was pretty fucking impossible. And, then you're meeting people like John Howard as a kid in the Australian dressing room. And he's coming up and shaking my hand. He's happy to meet me. "Oh, Jack, are you going to play cricket for Australia when you grow up?" "Yes, Mr. Howard." So I feel like if I don't do these things, and that's one example of hundreds of influential people. And as a child, being surrounded by your heroes, and they're saying the same things, and it was a lot of pressure. It was brainwashed, and I really didn't think that anything else was going to happen. So that was probably the toughest lesson was, it was dealing with that first failure, I guess, of that not turning out, a life of professional sport. But it was not even a talent thing. Like my old man will even say to me, he goes, "You have more talent than what I have. You have more skill than what I have." But it was the mental side of it that I had shocking performance anxiety, really. At the nets and training would be no factor. I'd feel completely competent and full of confidence. But step out onto the field on the Saturday, I felt like all of Australia's eyes were on me to perform.
And the thing is, I feel like, as you move into like parenting and things like that, man, like that's probably like one of the things that will like influence and maybe shape, the way that you father because of your experiences and stuff like that. Because I can relate a little bit to what you're saying. Just on I was in a sports academic scholarship at a very good school in high school, and my parents didn't come. We didn't have a lot of money at all, especially compared to like the kids that went to that school. And so I felt a lot of pressure, through high school. And I was a very introverted kid, man. I did not have any social skills whatsoever, And so sort of combined that with like just a lot of like social anxiousness, didn't make friends easily, kind of like looking around and feeling out of place, with all these kids with so much money. And I felt like an immense amount of pressure. And I don't really blame my parents for it, right? It's not something, they wanted the best from me, and I don't think it was a poor parenting thing on their behalf to, like put me through that. Like I feel very grateful for that opportunity. But at the time, for me as a teen, like I just felt so much pressure. And I remember just wanting to be like my little brother or my little sister who went to different schools, because of, I didn't want that pressure, and I think that will influence, even when my wife and I discuss schooling, and I'm like, I have no inclination necessarily towards sending my kids to a school just because it's a private school. I just want them to have like the opportunities that I want, and know full well that like there are so many other ways to get like kids those opportunities. There's private tutors, private mentors. There's so many other things, right? Yeah. But what I don't want necessarily, or what I want to be cognizant of, is how I felt during that time, and sort of making sure that isn't necessarily the way that things pan out for my kids.
Yep. Yeah, no, it was tough, and that I actually felt like a pawn, even for the private school. They were there. That was all part of their prestige.
You were like a chess piece in the game.
That's what I mean.
You didn't get autonomy or control really over your destiny.
Yeah, and then it's as simple as like somebody getting you out in the schoolyard at 10 years old and celebrating like they've won the fucking Olympics, like you were a trophy or something to be. So that made it very hard to just be a kid and enjoy sport. And there was nobody else in the entire state who could relate to what I was going to.
Were you lonely?
Very. I think, yeah, because again, there was no one who could really relate to it. And then I think, the combination of then it became footy season, and footy season was kind of like freedom because it was a different set of eyes. It wasn't the same sport. and I think it was an avenue for me to start dealing with some of probably the pent up aggression and anger that I'd, built over the summer period, and that was a great outlet for me to express that. And it was the way that I played footy, but then. Tassie's a small place, and the tall poppy syndrome is strong down there, and there's a lot of, I suppose, lower socioeconomic groups in there, and it didn't take long before, you were no longer a target with the cricket ball, but rather somebody's fists, and that was something that, I don't know, I never really shied away from, and before you know it, you've had, 7 years of snowballing violence of somebody's brother's cousin for the next weekend to put you on the list. So, that was what normality was for me up until 20, I guess.
Why do you think your outlet was violence?
Wasn't necessarily something that I chose or went looking for, but it definitely...
it gave you something, though.
I'm very competitive, and I actually remember before my first football game as under nines or something, my old man actually said to me, he goes, now the person who pulls out's the one who gets hurt. And yes, Dad. So I never pulled out, and now I understand the, I suppose, the physics of that situation, and it served me pretty well most of the time. And at the end of the day, fighting is somewhat, it's an athletic bout. And fortunately, I was blessed with some attributes and had that athleticism and found the gym very young. And in many ways, that was probably what led me to the gym around that sort of 14, 15-year-old age, was going, well, nobody's going to fuck with me. And so, that was the driving force of all the training motivation to be a savage lifting weights for a good 10-year period, But and it became, might have been failing with cricket, but I was winning on the weekend. You know what I mean? Mm. So you're getting, we kind of spoke about it before with a child, right? If you don't give them their attention, their behaviour is going to start acting up, whether it be good or bad behaviour, to get your attention. One way or another, I was getting attention, acknowledgement, recognition, respect, all these things that I wasn't probably getting from, any other areas of my life.
What the hell happens to you? Because I know I can relate to this once I finished basketball and I had my own challenges. What happens to you once you stop? What type of, when you have a massive void after you walk away from cricket and that stops?
Yeah, there was a lot of, there was tough times because, as I said, there was till I was probably nearly 20 years old, where that dream was dead. There was literally no thought about what else could life be.
Yeah.
I genuinely thought that was what was going to happen.
Yep.
So now you're sitting there, you've finished your school studies and you basically didn't attend and you're not really sure what you were going to be doing. Given that I was in the gym from a young age, that's where, again, I'm just hugely fortunate for the second opportunity in life, or the second chance in life, that the gym and fitness and the health industry has given me, because it was a natural transition. It's kind of like a cousin of sport in a way. It's still training. It's still athletic. It's in that coaching realm. I've spent my whole life around that. So it wasn't necessarily plan A. Like, I went and started trying to study a finance and marketing degree because I wanted money. And that was, again, one of the appeals of sport, right? Was, and it's funny looking back on it, goes, well, if I'm rich and successful as a sportsman, then that validates my ego and all these kinds of things. So there was a lot of that work to overcome. What was the original question?
I want to know about the emotion. want to know about the void and the emotion that you have to face when all of this validation is gone. When,
mate, it's probably only something that I've only made peace with in the last couple of years. Like, don't get me wrong, it's still every year at the Boxing Day test and stuff, we're on holiday period, and I love nothing more than sitting down and watching test cricket all day. I can do that, and I sit there and a friend of mine, Mitch Marsh, he just won the Allan Border Medal only last week. Me and Mitch are only born a couple months apart. My dad and his dad, Swampy Marsh, hold records for opening batters together, and he did what I couldn't.
wow.
So there's, and we were in the Australian Under-19s Academy together and all of these things. So it's like there's still times at that Christmas period that is difficult, because the Boxing Day test is the thing that, that's everything that you try and play for, and it's very natural to slip back into those headspaces. But I can also see that if cricket did work out, I probably would have fucking hated who I am today as a person. I think I would have been a cocky little shit who's just had everything go his way with too much money, who probably at numerous times has embarrassed his father and his family in the media. That would be my prediction. Whereas the failure of cricket, despite having now been able to find forgiveness for myself and be completely empathetic, like, no wonder you couldn't succeed. You were under a mental truck and you were 15 years old. You were not equipped to deal with that. Grown men struggle to deal with that. But it taught me that talent doesn't equal successful outcome. You have to apply yourself and you have to work hard. I don't think the long-term game plan for success is to just be working harder. We have to work much more efficiently and smarter, but there is definitely a big chunk that is attributed to periods of hard work that is unavoidable. I think it's a complete fallacy to think that you're going to get anywhere in life without fucking putting in the work and grinding on no matter what it is that you want to achieve. And I think that failure forced me to learn the lesson of hard work, and the failure forced me to figure out who I am as a person outside of cricket. And I didn't know who that was. So, that had a lot of time with a psychologist. And I'm a big advocate for, finding a good psychologist. And although there's been times where those encounters have been ones that have involved negative emotions and sadness, I can tell you right now, hand on heart, that I spend more time laughing in those psychologist appointments than I do laughing these days.
You mean crying?
Sorry, laughing than crying.
Yeah.
That's what I meant to say. And it has sent me down a path of self-discovery. The violence stuff, was... Again, I kind of grew up in the 90s and early 2000s in Tassie, where you can get away with things. And then you come to Melbourne and you realise there's cameras on every corner, and before you know it, you've turned the ship around a little bit. You've got a business and life's looking on the onward and upward, and now you're in and out of court for the entire year, and pretty stressful about the outcomes that can come with that. It quickly
maybe that happened?
Yeah, that happened, and it gets you to put the cue in the rack, so to speak.
Do you know about this?
With the brawling days.
I don't know about this.
No, it was just I suppose, an incident out one night, physical altercation, which led to me being arrested, and and spending 12 months in and out of court where I hadn't told anyone because I didn't want my family or my mother or anyone stressing about it, but it was extremely stressful.
You didn't tell them when you were going through it?
No, I didn't tell them at all.
Wow.
So because I didn't want anyone else to have that burden of stress or worry, but fortunately it didn't go that way, and the outcome fell in my lap. Quite actually, the police lost my file in court, and the judge apologised to me. And I got a diversion and had to do some drug rehab stuff and pay some donations to the Royal Children's, but that was a sign. It was a sign that
It's like, here's your chance.
yes, here's the chance.
We don't give you another one of these.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And then of course, so that kind of stuff. I'm certainly, I've spoken about it numerous times quite openly on my podcast about, the value that psychedelics have played in my life and in the journey of self-discovery and dealing with mental health stuff. And then in the middle of COVID and getting diagnosed with testicular cancer. So, a lot of a lot at once, or over a 10-year period. There's a lot of sort of pivotal moments there, and all of the negative experiences, whether it be violence, whether it be court, whether it be psychedelics, and grieving and emotions, whether it be cancer, they are reorganizational experiences that put life in perspective about what is important and come with a silver lining. And I feel grateful for all of them. I'm glad that I've only got one nut. It really does. It puts everything on show about what's important to you in your life and allows you to kind of stop sweating the small stuff. And yeah, if things worked out the way that you dreamed that they were going to work out, I don't think I would be any happier or look back on my life once it's all said and done and think it was any better than what it's going to be now.
Sounds like you've come to a contentment and peace in a way.
Yeah. But like I said, it's nice. The business is going well. I'm getting married in a couple months' time. New business on the rise. Drugs, alcohol, violence no longer exist. Stability and peace. It's something that's
beautiful.
To be seriously undervalued as a man. I think just the word peace and stability. It's to put your head down on the pillow at night and feel grateful and not be uber stressed and worrying about those things. And not living that chaotic life of drugs and alcohol. It's a much nicer place to be.
Well done.
That's it, man. Well said.
Maybe I want to finish on psychedelics.
Yeah, cool.
What did you take? What was that experience like? What did you learn? What did you see?
For sure. It's interesting that because I only put up a post that Cruz actually filmed last night, and I jokingly said on the snippet from the vlog that if you want to stay strong, don't take psychedelics, because as I sort of mentioned, my anger was my fuel for training like a psychopath, and I was pretty angry and had a lot of aggression to channel into the training. And then as that started to dissipate, I kind of lost my fuel for training. And it also, as I said, it gives you perspectives on what's actually important in life, and could realize that, hey, me training and being this version of myself is no longer a necessity as it once was to perhaps feel safe. And yeah, there's more to me as a person that I want to nourish and share with the world that isn't what you see on social media. But the first time I guess I had psychedelics, I was put in the deep end. So DMT, dimethyltryptamine,
You started with DMT?
I started with DMT. I'd never had a psychedelic before. And a friend of mine who I was hanging out with at the time and still good friends with, God bless him, he called it the smoko drug. I would never, after having done DMT a lot of times now, I would never, ever describe DMT as the smoko drug. And his justification for this nickname was that it only lasts for 15 minutes. So played it down to be very candid and casual. I'm like, oh yeah, so what's going to go on? And he's like, oh, you'll see some geometrical shapes and some colors, and it lasts for 10, 15 minutes, and you'll be sweet. And, okay, cool. Let's kick it. So I've inhaled the DMT and literally died. You die. You disappear from this realm of existence. You're not in your body. You are. It is like trying to explain, the kaleidoscopes. It's like trying to explain that to a blind man.
Wow.
You are not there. And when you come back to that, I guess, to at least a conscious awareness of your presence in the room and your body, it's probably been 2 or 3 minutes at most, but it feels like a lifetime. It genuinely felt like I had died and lived a whole nother life.
No.
In that one, it felt like the longest day of my life. And especially because I wasn't aware of it. I thought I'd pissed myself. I hadn't, but that's what it felt like. And I was petrified. I was really scared because I'd never had any warm up to this realm of consciousness, right? So they say we have 60,000 thoughts per day, 96% of them being subconscious, meaning that they're running in the background and you're unaware of them. And it's all of these thoughts through your pineal gland running out of a really tiny hole really fast. So for the next 2 weeks, I was kind of fucked because I was trying to process everything that had happened, and it made me question everything that you thought was real or could possibly exist. Everything was brought into question. But 2 weeks went by, and then I was ready to try it again. I was quite excited to try it again, now knowing what I was actually walking into. I certainly would not be advising anyone to do it the way that I did, because it had its element of, it was traumatic somewhat, but it could be really bad for other people. But it really was one of the moments that probably gave me the courage to start turning up in the world as the version of me that I wanted to, and to stop putting in time and effort towards people that didn't give it in return, and the courage to be alone and sort of find my new circle of people that I resonated with.
Courage.
Yeah. It gave me the courage, and it told me that it was okay to be who I actually am. So that was my first introduction to psychedelics, and then another profound one that I had was in the middle of COVID. So like a lot of us, we're having a lot of mental difficulty. I just before COVID, I'd sold my my previous business that had been, my dream for 7 and 8 years, and had the falling out with the business partner and a friend, and had then gone and set up Jungle HQ and spent every dollar I had to my name to do so. And before you know it, boom, we're in lockdown, shut down. And I found myself, I found myself in a bad place at the beginning of COVID where, it wasn't ideal. I was broke because I just spent all my money to set up the gym, and we just got shut down. So, and I hadn't taken a break from one business to the other. And I would say that I hadn't gone through that transitional period that we were talking about before, about becoming sort of a man of responsibility and value and purpose. And a lot of the time, whether it be through business or whether it be through my health, I'd sacrificed the fun social things, which involved a lot of partying with my friendship circle. And so when we were told it was only going to be 6 weeks, I was like, well, fuck it. I can't control any of this. and I haven't had any time just to myself and let my hair down for a while, I'm just gonna party. And that's how I handled it. And partying for 4 days a week for 6 weeks, and then realizing that your business now isn't open, and now I've got even less money, and my mental health is not great because what goes up must come down. I was in a pretty fucking bad place, to the point where I was actually going to Bunnings just for, you do anything to get out of the house for the day in lockdown. And I found myself caught in one of the aisles, sort of being mesmerized by rope, because I was fantasizing in a way about, well, what would I hang myself with? It's heavy, right? And I never felt like I was at risk of following through it, but rather this is where my head was at. These were the intrusive circulating thoughts that were existing in my mind. And it wasn't the first time that I've had these thoughts in my life. So it wasn't much fun to be back there. Through not long after that, I took a heroic dose of mushrooms. So when we look at the research that McKenna did at Harvard in the 60s, they were able to identify that psilocybin, about 0.5 gram, was considered a microdose, which was nickname your creative dose, non-hallucinogenic, but a sense of creativity and uplifting, you could say. And we're hearing more and more about the power and efficacy of microdoses in its role with treating depression and PTSD and stuff. And I think for it to be done in a clinical setting under supervision is really important. So I'm not encouraging people to do what I've done. I'm just sharing my stories and experiences. The 2.5 grams was considered a therapeutic dose, and a social experience where, feelings of enlightenment, mild hallucinations, often laughter and those things. And 5 grams was the heroic dose, which was a full submersion into the subconscious mind and rather non-communicative and out of body, right? But plenty of things on file and stories of people taking more and more without any, it's not a drug you can overdose on. So I had an 8 gram trip, and within the hour or so I was in my bed. I had headphones on. I had my eyes closed. And the first hour of that trip, in my mind, I was a black caged animal in a jungle, and there was people poking at me through the cage with a stick, and there was just extreme savagery in my mind. And I was the animal. And it kind of came to tell me that the only reason that level of savagery, aggression, and violence exists in your mind is out of a protectiveness for those who you love. And then, the flick books where you're flicking them and there's a picture difference on every single page. It was like I had a flick book of every single person that's come in and out of my life. And it acted like a filter. And then for the next basically 5 hours, so at the other side of that aggression, I was just met with the most overwhelming amount of appreciation for what I do have and who I have in my life. So, for the last few months, I've been very solely focused on, look what's been taken away from me. Look what I can't do. Look at the money that I can't make. And that was my reality, because that's where my attention was. Whereas this psilocybin experience allowed me to reorganize my thoughts and my subconscious mind and rechannel my attention and focus on all of the things that I do have in life. And like night and day, I went from having suicidal thoughts the next day to just knowing that everything was going to be okay, really, and that I was good. So, I've had a bunch of experiences like that, all not all coming from a bad place. And then I've utilized microdoses at different times through, periods of, creativity, whether it become with branding or, planning or, thinking about the messaging within your brand and what's it representing for, and journaling and just manifesting thoughts, you know what I mean? But, yeah. Psychedelics, man. I haven't taken any for quite a long time, for a number of years, and a part of that's because, I went through a period where I used probably DMT 100 times over a 12 to 18 month period, and
Wait, that's not an exaggeration?
no, that's not an exaggeration. I probably did it 5 to 10 times almost every weekend for probably 6 month period. So we'd sit there, would do a trip, would come back, would have a conversation about where we just went and what we experienced. So extremely like the vulnerability and the walls are down. Like we would just share each other exactly what we've just gone through and we've experienced, and we'd debrief, and then on the hour, go again.
You did it with
my friend Rod, who introduced me to them. And so, there became a time actually where I was on a bender and I did DMT and I got fucking barred at the gates. I got met with like so much shame. There's like the DMT spirit was looking down at me and said, no, fuck you. You're not coming in heaven. You're not coming in here. You're acting like a pig. Get your life together. Clean it up. I haven't done DMT since. I've done mushrooms since, but
that was the last time you did
that was the last time I did DMT, and that was probably 5 years ago. But I don't feel the desire to really do it anymore because life's good. I'm in a good place, Like I don't feel like I need it for me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, completely. How did you? Was there any fear before taking these compounds, these psychedelics, of what you might undergo through those experiences and how you might? Yeah.
DMT is terrifying.
Yeah. How did you maneuver through that terror? Because you could have not done it. You could have just avoided it.
I've had a lifetime of preparing me for fear or overcoming or compartmentalizing and ignoring fear, because fear is crippling. So I just learned to act regardless of fear. So if I decided I was doing it, I was doing it. But that couple seconds before DMT, because of the transitional period, at least with mushrooms, right, there's a build up.
Yeah.
DMT, you go from being completely cognizant like we are right now to within 5 to 10 seconds, you are out of body.
5 to 10 seconds?
5 to 10 seconds, you are not here. Like the body is there, the vessel is there, but you are not. And every time that you do DMT, I would go back to this realm, and I say they're people, but they're not people because they had no faces. But I was aware of their presence, and they lived there permanently. Every time, they were always there.
Same presences.
Same presences and same people. And I've heard of people saying that over years and time of practice of being in that field, that they've actually been able to figure out who some of those people are, and they may be deceased and deceased family members and so forth. Like, it gets pretty deep. I've not had that personally, but I've heard people talk of that. And it's probably pretty hard for some people to believe if you've never gone there.
That's so wild. It's like what if there was a way to connect to our past generations and deceased people and people from other not other worlds, but from past ancestors through that experience.
Mm.
What if what we think we know is reality is just one layer of just 1,000 other layers, and maybe you just...
And this is exactly what I mean, how everything that you think was real is now completely brought into question of what you thought actually to be possible. And you get that, like, whatever's the truth or whatever's real in this life, again, it's all our opinion. Like, I have a reality from my perspective, you have one, and Ben has one. Our perspectives and our interpretation of that experience is all going to vary and differ, but they're all true. You know what I mean? So in many ways, it's taught me to be much more respectful of people's reality and their opinions. If anything, rather than feeling challenged by someone's different opinion these days, I love it when someone's got a different opinion. It's like, oh, enlighten me. Come on, convince me. Give me that different perspective.
You've been humbled.
Because then you can come from from whatever the situation is, feeling a lot more prepared because you've considered A, B, C, D, E. And I think so much of that is some of that's in business, you know? It's like if I do A, I get B. Oh, but you didn't consider C or D. You forgot the variable. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, I think like the way I would describe it is like a strong opinion held loosely. You know what I mean? So you like welcome challenge and stuff like that. You know, and I think that's like it's something you don't see enough of, like especially in our industry.
And even just like, you know, what's right and wrong. Well, who gets to determine that? Like, of course, you got your morals, but it's just different.
Right and wrong, from my observation, is culture dependent. And so it's like this big cultural hemisphere that envelops a certain area or country or city. And we collectively decide based on the ebb and flow of what influences that. Politics, masculine, feminine roles in the household, laws, regulations, etc. So, yeah, because you can go to a different country and city and what's right here may be wrong over there, which is fascinating because that means, well, it mostly isn't a universal right or wrong, mostly. It seems like psychedelics has unlocked a lot of that for you.
Yeah, just to be accepting of difference. Because what you learn in these experiences as well is that you are so insignificant. That all these things, like your problems are what you make them. It only matters because you've put value to it. And you're getting caught up in your own little world of it's so insignificant. And when you can spend a bit more time in that space, it's freeing. It's freeing.
I feel it in this moment now you're talking about it.
It allows you to be more present.
Yeah.
Because whatever I've got coming up this afternoon, does it really matter?
Yeah.
We're here having a chat right now. That's all good.
Is there anything you want to leave with, or is there anything you want to leave with?
No, man, that's, you know me. I'm an open book.
Yeah, bro.
But thank you for getting me on, guys. It's always good to catch up.
Man, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
Yeah. We went through most of what I wanted to cover off with you today.
Just naturally.
Yeah. We actually kind of did like in the first 20 minutes. And then it just kind of went great from there. But man, you got some exciting things ahead.
I do.
Getting married, joining the club.
That's it.
I'll welcome you. Possibly a move.
At least an option to get out of the cold in winter on the tax man.
The best.
You know, and that's, if anything, that's a win.
That alone is worth it.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Jack. If there's any last thoughts or asks of the people listening, you're welcome to share.
No, I'm good, man. Like I said, it's just good to catch up with you and catch you before you're back off to the States.
Yes, sir.
Given you're an international businessman these days.
Yeah,
hard to tie you down.
Apparently, yeah. But thank you so much for taking the time and doing this spontaneously.
Hey, you're welcome.
Love everything you do and love you. And KATABASIS podcast, thank you.
Cheers, guys.